Welcome to the Seminole County Commission meeting and work session Tuesday, October 13th, 2020. If I would be so kind to ask each and every one of you to silence your cell phones and your electronic devices so we don't have any feedback and any interruptions, respectful to the rest of the crowd and participants. The Board of County Commission meeting work session for October 13th, 2020 is being held both in person and virtually using communications media technology made permissible pursuant to the Governor's executive orders. This meeting may be viewed in person in the BCC chambers, on SGTV, on YouTube, and by registering to participate in the Zoom webinar. Residents can provide public comment in person or by registering to speak on the Seminole County website and Board of County Commissioners webpage. There you will find a link to register for the webinar entitled Meeting Webinar, Registration and Helpful Hints. If you're unable to join via computer or online, interested parties should call the following phone number, 407-665-0808. That's 407-665-0808. There you'll find additional information and how to participate via telephone and get whatever technology assistance you need. We will take public comment on each item as it appears on the agenda. In order to be recognized to speak, if you're using a computer or iPad, you will need to use your raise hand feature, or if you're calling on a telephone, you will need to press *9. If you're attending the meeting in person, you'll be required to wear a mask and social distance at all times. Today we're going to have the invocation by Dr. Walt Person, who is a pastor at the Sanford Church of Christ and also a chaplain at our Seminole County Sheriff's Department. Mr. Person, if you would be so kind to lead us in invocation, sir.
Let's bow together. Our Father in heaven, creator of all, unmatched in power, we approach you in the confidence of prayer for this nation, this state, this county, and this community. We pray for these that are already serving, that their decisions that they make would promote an atmosphere of righteousness and goodwill for all. And for the families that live in this community to grow and to flourish in a moral environment. We pray for those that are currently running for office and whatever is best for the climate of our county, to promote this state, to strengthen this country. Father, that they would promote righteousness and make open the opportunity to teach your will amongst men. We pray for this commission specifically, that each would be able to serve this community with three major goals in mind: with capability and loving the truth, with integrity in all the financial, moral, and righteous decisions that they are forced to face every day, with wisdom, recognizing the importance of wise decisions and wise associations, that our law is for all, that human dignity is special, and your pattern for the home is blessed. We love you. We thank you for the directions we get from your word, and we pray for these men and women that serve this community and make it possible for us to have a wonderful community and county to live in. Father, thank you for your blessings. Be with each of them. Strengthen us all. Keep us safe. It is in Jesus' name I pray. Amen.
Amen. Mr. Lockhart will now lead us in the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Dr. Person. We appreciate sincerely you being here today and lead us in invocation. Commissioner Lockhart, thank you as always for leading us in the pledge today. Now we're going to go to our update on the emergency management side. We've got Mr. Alan Harris and Donna Walsh with the Florida Department of Health to give us an update on what's going on in the county with our COVID-19. And I don't think we have any storms currently going, but Mr. Harris will inform us accordingly.
Yeah. Alan Harris, Chief Administrator for the Office of Emergency Management. I'm going to talk briefly about the flooding that we've experienced across the county. And then y'all have heard me multitudes of times, probably getting sick of hearing from me. So I asked Donald Walsh to come and talk about the COVID side and give the COVID numbers today. But on the flooding side, we are experiencing some flooding on multiple lakes, inland lakes around Seminole County, one of those lakes being Sylvan Lake. Sylvan Lake experienced high water levels due to an outfall being blocked based on some road construction at State Road 46. Florida Department of Transportation, our Public Works Department, intervened very quickly, as well as Commissioner Constantine, Representative Plankin, and a couple others here on the board to help those individuals out there. Within one day, we had sandbags opened up, and we currently do at Sylvan Lake Park. Those are open from 10 to 7 for anyone in the community that needs sandbags in that location. Additional pumps were brought in by the Florida Department of Transportation, as well as some construction done on State Road 46 to create an outfall to help alleviate the flooding on the lake, and the lake has started to come down. On the St. Johns River, we continue to be in action stage. Right now, we have crested, and it is continuing to move down. You talk about a tropical system. There is a tropical system out there, although it is not favorable to continue. It's experiencing some very strong shear right now, so the National Hurricane Center is only giving it a 20% chance of becoming any type of strong tropical system. With that, though, we don't need any additional rain. We need the water to continue to go down on the St. Johns River. The parks that we have currently closed are Hillside Park. The boat ramp there is underwater, as well as Molt Lake Park. There was a boat rally that was to take place this last weekend. The rally continued. They just couldn't use the park to launch their boats, but they found ways around it. We also have closures at Black Bear Wilderness area because the water is over the hiking trails there, not safe. Lake Jessup Wilderness area, as well as the Geneva Wilderness area, only a couple sections, the fishing pier, and then the southern camping area. Hopefully, if the water continues to go down, we will be able to reopen those parks and reopen those boat ramps. As I mentioned previously, Mullet Lake had already a mitigation project that was done there, which allowed that boat ramp to stay open much, much longer than it would have previously. We have put out no wake signs on the boat ramps that are existing and they're opening, or that are remain open, as well as the Florida Wildlife Commission has flipped the signs to have no wake signs along the river to encourage people to drive safely, as to not damage docks and other property along the high river. With that, I'd like to turn it over to Donna Walsh, Director of the Florida Department of Health for Seminole County, to give a COVID update.
Thank you, Mr. Harris. Welcome, Ms. Walsh.
Thank you. Good morning, Chairman Zimbauer, commissioners, and other county officials. And thank you so much, Alan. I know that Alan does a terrific job reporting out, but he did ask that I come today just to go over our numbers and what's appearing on the dashboard. These are from yesterday because the numbers that are reported this morning are still provisional and finalized before noon. So Florida has had a total of 736,024 positive cases reported as of yesterday, with 15,412 deaths. Here in Seminole County, that we're just under 10,000 positive cases at 9,459. 358 current active cases, and what that means are those people who test positive who are currently in isolation and considered infectious for 10 days. We have unfortunately had 232 deaths reported here in Seminole County. I will tell you, of the deaths reported, just as mentioned several weeks ago, the majority of the deaths are occurring in the age group 75 years of age and older. That's about 72% of our deaths. So it holds true that our most vulnerable populations are our aging population, as well as those with underlying health conditions, chronic conditions such as diabetes, heart disease, and obesity. We currently have 23 hospitalizations. Again, we've seen a significant decline in the number of hospitalizations due to COVID-19. This is encouraging. We have weekly calls with our hospital CEOs and medical directors, and they continue to inform us of any trends that they're seeing within the hospital system. They are cautiously optimistic. They certainly are seeing some critically ill folks come into the hospital, and as a result of the COVID-19 response, they are actually seeing a delay in people with other health conditions coming into the hospital for care. So, many of their ICU beds are occupied by those other than COVID-related that have delayed care. We have an overall positivity rate in our county since the beginning of the response of 10.62%. However, we have been trending down, for several weeks now, I would say for a couple of months. Our positivity rate for the last week was 3.87%, 3.91% for the previous week, and for the 2-week average, 3.89%. We were as low as 3.59% on October 11th and 1.92% on October 12th. So we are trending down. If you look at the total number of cases reported per day for the last week, which included October 5th through October 11th, we averaged anywhere from a low of 20 cases reported to a high of 37 on a daily basis. The week prior, 16 to 44 was the range. If you look back to May, we averaged anywhere from 0 to 5 cases reported daily. And that was previous to the Memorial Day holiday and previous to further recommendations of facial coverings and so forth. If you compare the number of cases we had reported back in May, it was a total for the month of 109 cases. If you look at the cases that were reported in September, we had 970 cases. That was down from August of 1,610 cases. And then in July, when I would consider we had a surge here in our county, we had a total of 3,930 cases reported. So that kind of gives you an idea that we are trending down. We're not there where we were in May. So far in October, we've had a total of 368 cases reported, and that's as of yesterday, October 12th. So if you also look at our long-term care facilities, we have had a good many of cases reported from our long-term care facilities. The required testing was discontinued several weeks ago, curative testing, and we've seen a marked decrease in the number of positive tests, of course, and if you don't test, you don't know. So the county has, worked very hard to partner with True Health and with Allied Health to provide testing to facilities that don't have the means to do it themselves. They have already started that last week, and they've had several facilities. It's in your SIT report if you want the details of how many facilities have currently been tested. We've had a few positives, and not that many yet, but we're just starting again to help these facilities test. Another resource that was provided by our state was these point-of-care testing tests that are being deployed not only to our long-term care facilities, but also to our schools and to our senior communities. And so we are in the process of making sure that they're appropriately trained. They have the CLIA waiver certificate to provide the testing or any other resource to help testing. And so working very closely with all of those entities to make sure that they have the appropriate resources to test. These point-of-care tests are antigen tests. They are intended to be used for individuals who are symptomatic within 0 to 7 days of their onset of symptoms. So they're not intended to be a screening test because of the validity of the test, and whether or not it could result in a false positive or negative. So that's the indication for those particular tests. In our congregate facilities, certainly when anybody congregates, there's more likelihood of potential exposure. So we are certainly seeing that, in our correctional facility. We're seeing that in schools a bit. Actually, though, with our schools, we have, let me just give you the data there. We've had 140 positive cases reported from our schools, and that includes public and private schools. Of those, the majority are community acquired. We've only seen evidence of a very few secondary transmissions in about 12 of those from 7 schools, but very minimal, and we're in the process of confirming those. Again, in our long-term care facilities, that we have had a good many deaths associated with those because of the age group that those facilities care for. So with children, I know that there's been a lot of concern about whether or not children are susceptible to complications. I think I'd mentioned this before. In the state of Florida, for those under 18 years of age, the state as a whole has reported over 61,000 cases, with 776 hospitalizations and 9 deaths. There's also the multi-system inflammatory syndrome that you'd heard of. There's, in the state of Florida, 69 total cases reported, none here in Seminole County to date that we're aware of. We've had a couple of rule outs, but nothing confirmed. As of October 11th, in Seminole County, there have been a total of 743 cases of our 9,459 that have been in children less than 18 years of age. 163 in 0 to 4-year-olds, 360 in 5 to 14-year-olds with 3 hospitalizations, and 1,866 cases in 15 to 24-year-olds with 14 hospitalizations. The distribution of the cases by age demographic, we certainly have seen more in the 15 to 24-year-old age group. We are adjacent to a major college and university, and so, certainly we have seen an increase in that age group. So we're working very closely to continue our case investigations, our contact tracing, and to try to minimize the spread of this virus as much as we possibly can in our community. We have continued with our enhanced workforce. The workforce that we currently have is additional 55 staff that's supported by federal dollars through the state, and we intend to keep those staff through December at the very least, and then looking for other revenue support if we need to continue next year. Of course, we are actively planning for COVID vaccine, the arrival of COVID vaccine. We have received nothing official yet, but some preliminary planning documents from Health and Human Services, and our teams have met in-house as well as with the county already to start logistical planning. And in the event that that comes before the end of the year, and even if it doesn't, we're ready when it does come next year. So with that, I'll take any questions if you guys have questions.
Any questions from the board? Mr. Lockhart?
Mrs. Walsh, could you address the concern that we received via email? I don't know if it was by one, at least one, may have been more than one individual, seeing that we were doing testing at school sites. They were concerned that maybe there was an increased risk of transferring the disease at those testing sites.
Sure. Well, currently, any school sites that are being used in, and these are testing events that are supported by the county, but any school site that we are testing at are drive-through. So the risk would be very minimal because people are actually in their vehicles driving through. When the schools, if the schools do receive and accept the point of care testing, the antigen testing, those are intended for symptomatic staff, teachers, and students. We're still in the planning phases for that. So I'm not certain how that is going to work out. We certainly would not encourage people who are sick to come back to school to get tested. Only if they were present at that time and the parent agreed, if it were a student, for them to be tested right there and then, would it be really beneficial. Otherwise, we would refer symptomatic folks who've already left the school campus to go elsewhere to get tested, and there's plenty of testing sites available.
Right. All right. Thank you.
Great. Any other questions? Mr. Harris, any questions for Mr. Harris? Seeing none, thank you all very much. We appreciate your time and keeping us apprised on what's going on.
Well,
Thank you.
and I know I say this often, but thank you so much for your continued support. We couldn't do what we do without you. It's a partnership, and none of us could do it alone. So thank you.
Amen. Thank
Thank you.
you.
Thank you.
Okay, next up, we're going to have Ms. Guillet give us a CARES Act funding update. But before we do that, I want to just mention a last-minute request to notice the public on a continuation of the 2020 census. So if you have not, fill out your census documents. You can do so at 2020census.gov. It's now been extended to, I guess, through November, in hopes that we get as much counts as we possibly can. I would urge everyone in our community who has already done so, you are one of the top in the nation for responding percentage-wise, and I think we're still number one in the state for responses. However, we still need to get some count. I think we're down about 17, we believe it's about 17% shy of a full count. So we urge everybody to do that as soon as you can just by going to 2020census.gov. Ms. Guillet, if you would be so kind to give us your update.
Morning, everybody.
Good morning.
We'll jump right into this. The first slide I want to draw your attention to is the recommended allocations. You've seen this slide in all of our presentations. As you're aware, we're eligible for approximately $82 million in CARES Act funding. And we had done, we've been adjusting the allocations as we've seen the needs change. This, you will notice on this, in prior charts, we had a replenishment fund line, which last time you saw it was at 15 million, and those were sort of a reserve to address needs that were not identified yet. We, as part of the new directives that we received on being able to access CARES funds, they wanted a funding plan for us, a spending plan for the entire 82 million. And we wanted to make sure that we had the money allocated to all possible uses and didn't feel comfortable sending them sort of a reserve fund line. So you'll see from this, I've indicated where we moved those replenishment funds to the categories where we expected they might be needed. We moved $4 million out of that 15 million into small business assistance, another 4 into individual and nonprofit assistance, and 6.5 million into the public safety service and health expenditures. That adds up to 14.5 million as opposed to the 15, and that's because we shifted another 500,000 into public safety as a specific expenditure to provide funding assistance to bridge the gap for some of the health department's needs. We're concerned that they may run into some shortfalls. So we've got that as an allocated expense. So we'll roll right into small business assistance. Our current status is we've authorized funding at the level of 9.15 million. That means that we have either in process or have paid out that amount of money in awards. When we talked about this at 2 meetings ago, we were at 5.2 million. We have 29 FTEs dedicated to this program. That is a slight reduction from what we discussed at our last meeting. We were at 36. Because we're moving through these, we've only got about 208 applications left currently under review, although we are still accepting applications in this program. We've shifted some of those folks over to individual review because the volume is so much higher there. 75% of the completed applications are still missing information. I will say the good news is, last time we talked it was 82%, so we're knocking that down a little bit. We have about 900 applications that are either in the payment processing, final approval payment processing, or paid category. And the average award that we're providing to businesses is around $7,300. You know, we have a scale from $5,000 to $15,000 depending on the size of the business. Individual and nonprofit assistance, this is just the chart that reminds you what those programs are. With respect to individual assistance, we are, the current status is we've got about $5.5 million either already awarded or in the process. Last time we talked, we were at 2.9 million, so we're making some good progress there. We had 6,500 applications through the portal. Every one of those applications is now in some phase of review. Nonetheless, we've still got over 3,000 in review. Has been a challenge. Again, here we've seen an improvement. We have instead of 82% incomplete applications, we're at about 75%. One of the challenges we've had is, and we've talked with some of you about this, is once we get through the entire approval process, we still have to get documentation to pay out the funds. We need W-9s. We have been given permission to use some other verification processes through Sunbiz, and so we think that will help us. That just happened in the last couple of days. We think that will help us speed up the process because we get to an approval point and then we kind of have to stop while we get the missing paperwork. As you'll see, I mentioned we shifted some people from small business review to the individual review. If you noticed, between 2 weeks ago and now, we made significant progress in small business. I think we're going to see the same sort of ramp up now that we're in a groove with the individual assistance. And hopefully when I come back in 2 weeks, we'll have some really significant increases in the amount of money that's been approved. And I do want to thank the clerk. Grant, your folks have been wonderful. They've really been everybody is paddling as fast as they can on all of these programs, and I know that you added some additional staff to help get checks out. A very important role in this process is that you send the money to folks, so that's, we're really grateful for all of your assistance and how diligent everybody has been in the partnership here, so thank you for that. I will tell you, we are a little frustrated that we don't have more money out in the community. As I said, I'm hoping that when I come back in 2 weeks and give you another update, we'll have some good gains there. We are also looking at other potential opportunities for direct assistance. Everybody around the state is sort of doing a little bit of a different approach. If you saw back on that last slide, our average award is a little over $4,000 in individual assistance. That's 4 times what Orange County is giving. The most you can get in Orange County is $1,000 in individual assistance. So while we do have some additional paperwork, I think the level of assistance we're giving is much more significant than what you might see in some other counties. Other things that we're looking at are other opportunities. Polk County, for instance, has a program specifically for seniors. We're looking at finding ways to pre-qualify people for some direct assistance through programs that are already in place. Like one of the things we're looking at is the low-income senior property tax exemption. Can we consider folks pre-qualified and not having to go through all of the paperwork that we have to require through the existing individual program to provide some level of assistance to other targeted groups, folks who are maybe Meals on Wheels clients or free and reduced lunch clients. I don't know if we're going to be able to do that, but we're trying to find ways that we can more expeditiously get money out into the community to the folks that really need it. And some of our our other counties are doing some creative things, so we're all sort of working together, trying to learn from one another. We were all given this money without any sort of playbook, so, but our number one priority is getting money out into the community. So, so you may hear us discussing with you offline some of these opportunities, and I'm going to ask you at the end of this presentation to give me a little bit of leeway on that as well. With respect to nonprofits, we've awarded almost $2.5 million. If that's assuming you approve the applications that are on the docket today. Normally I go after your consent agenda, so I'm making some assumptions here. We've had 70 applications to date, and as of today, you will have been through about half of them. We are focused on essential services. Some of the applications, you may not see them. Some of them are difficult to even put into a supportive services category, but we've moved through the ones that we think are the most critical, and actually some of the ones that have needed a little more assistance are the ones that are coming in later in the game because they are taking some additional staff resources. I will remind you that these are on a reimbursement basis, so these every award that you've made has been an up to amount, and they'll have to provide documentation demonstrating that the funds that they're requesting have actually been used to provide assistance that is directly related to COVID. Public safety services and health expenditures, there really is not a lot of change from what we talked about last time, other than I mentioned that we did do an allocation in this category for the health department to try to bridge the gap on some of their funding challenges. Same thing with special economic and recovery incentives. The change here is that you blessed the agreement with Seminole State College, so we're moving forward with that. And we continue to work with, you'll see, I think, if you're not seeing them on this agenda, you'll see them on the next agenda, some agreements with some of the hotels to provide them some assistance, because as you all know, tourism has taken quite a significant hit as a result of the crisis. Actual expenditures and commitments to date. This is the chart where I try to tell you this is how far we're committed. Right now, we've seen some adjustments in all of the categories upward. Last time we were at about 29 million in commitments. Now we're at 40 million. What makes me a little bit nervous about this is we received our initial 20 million, and then the governor authorized phase 2 funding, which for us is about 16.5 million. There were 3 things that we needed to do to access that 16 million. We had to provide a quarterly report on the first 20 million. We had to demonstrate what our initial expenditures were, and we had to give them an overall funding plan for the 82 million. We've done everything that we needed to do. We've demonstrated that we've expended the initial 20 million. We are still waiting to hear exactly how we will get the $16.5 million that is in the second allocation of funding. We did give them the overall funding plan, have demonstrated that we are clearly out there beyond the $36 million that we would anticipate. There is a webinar today that they are supposed to give us more information on that and accessing the final 55%. We have a deadline to spend these funds, and we're not getting a whole lot of guidance from the state, and not to criticize, I'm so sorry, not to criticize the state, because they're sort of struggling to understand what's going on as well. And they have been great. They've tried very hard to work with us, but I'm just a little concerned. We're very measured. And I gave you this update because I don't want to get too far out there and have something blow up and us not get access to the entire 82 million that we're anticipating. So we will give you regular updates on this. And we're working with our partners on this as well to make sure that we don't get too far out there. But it is, if you talk to anybody in the state, we are a little frustrated about just trying to make sure that we know we're going to get the funding that has been allocated to us. So on that happy note, we'll move on forward. Today, I'm going to ask you to do a couple of things. You typically sort of accept the proposal, the funding allocations, and the items that have been included in this report. The other thing I would like you to do, you all received an email from Bryant discussing direct payment for utilities. As part of our individual assistance program, we are paying utilities and landlords or mortgage holders directly, and that's to make sure that these essential services get paid for and nobody gets cut off. There is a little bit of fuzzy guidance about direct payment to utilities. As you know, there's a concern that we not use CARES Act funds for revenue replacement. And just in an abundance of caution, we don't want anybody to mistake direct payments to our utility or to another local government utility as revenue replacement. So I'm going to ask you to authorize that based on the findings that are included in this report that Bryant and his office drafted. Again, authorize the revisions in the overall allocations as I presented to you. Authorize, in addition to the 82 million, we got 2.2 million in SHIP funds that are tied to CARES Act. And there is a lot more paperwork that has to be processed along with those funds. Everybody get identification of everybody in the house. We have to verify income of everybody in the household. It's a much more onerous process. We'd like to be able to use those funds to provide funding for folks who are in even greater dire straits, who are either facing eviction or who need more than 3 months assistance. It would be a higher bar for them to reach, but it gives us an opportunity. These funds also have to be expended by the end of the year, but it gives us an opportunity to direct those funds where they're needed the most, and also to tell folks if you're gonna, you gotta give us a little more information if you're gonna get more money. So I'd like to just go ahead. We've talked about it a couple times, but get a formal head nod from you on that. And then also to, as we get more clarification to ensure that we're going to get the additional funding from the state, I'd like to continue to pursue other options, direct assistance into the community for some targeted groups that we may be able to pre-qualify through other programs. So that's, those are the things I'm asking for direction and approval of on today, and I'll be happy to answer any questions you have.
Mr. Chairman,
Any questions from the board? Commissioner Laurie?
if there's no questions, I'd like to make a motion to approve the county manager's request for the items that she brought to our attention today for the CARES Act.
Mr. Chairman,
Okay.
Second.
Motion and a second, and we do have some questions. And Commissioner Carey?
yes, Nicole, I know that this is a reimbursement of how.
Commissioner
these
Carey,
folks are
one-
gonna get the work.
Commissioner Carey, hold up one second. Let me see if I can get our volume adjusted. Can we get the volume turned up for Commissioner Carey, please?
Okay, is that better?
Not really.
Okay,
Give us 1 second.
well,
Oh, there you go.
okay. Okay. So Nicole, I know this is a reimbursement program, but in the agreements, it doesn't really say what the time frame is that they have to apply for the reimbursement. And the only thing I know you said we had to have the money spent by the end of the year. So if we've obligated the money in these agreements, does that count as being spent? That's the first question. And then what is the deadline for them to request the reimbursement? Because if you're doing this through the end of the year, and they won't know what their expenses are until they've closed out their books at the end of the year. So that's going to take a few days, and you got holidays in there and stuff. So kind of how do you see that timing go? And are we able to reimburse them next year for, let's say?
So several questions in that. The first, so yes, it is reimbursement, and the expenditures have to be incurred by any of the subrecipients, whether it's a nonprofit or another governmental entity, before the end of the year. Our governmental partners are well aware of that, and so I'm not really concerned. They'll let us know if they're not going to expend money. Allison and Carrie and Community Services are working directly with all of the nonprofits, and we're doing monitoring of their agreements. We will get with them at the end of November, beginning of December, to do a status check and to see where they are in their expenditures, because I don't want to leave money on the table. If they're not going to be able to spend all of the money, we can certainly use that for other needs in the community. So we're going to be monitoring that. They can get, what we're going to need from them at that point is some sort of forecast of what we anticipate, and if they're not going to spend all of the money by the end of the year, understanding what might be available for other uses. They can get reimbursed after December 30th. They just have to have incurred the expense and paid the bill themselves by December 30th. We can still give them a reimbursement after that, but they have to have expended, which means have whatever they were purchasing and have paid the bill by December 30th. And they can come to us after December 30th for reimbursement, but it just has to have occurred by that point.
Okay, it just doesn't have any time frames in the agreements, and so if they need to do it within 10 days of the closeout of the month or something like that, I just don't want
That's a
us
good point.
to, you know, especially our not-for-profits to think that they're going to get reimbursed for something, and then because they didn't file it timely with us, we lose the opportunity to reimburse. That's just my main concern. So, you know, it's a lot for our staff to monitor and keep up with. There's a lot of agreements between the not-for-profits and the other ones and the individuals and the businesses and, you know, and everybody else. So,
The individuals and the
we do want
businesses.
to put it in there.
So on the individuals, we're paying directly to utilities and landlords, so that's not an issue. We will know our status there. The local government partners, we're working very closely with them. We have a good understanding of where they are, and they understand completely what their obligations are. The biggest challenge is going to be the nonprofits, and we are, I say we, it's not me, it's the Community Services Group, are talking directly with all of the nonprofits during both the application process, and then once the dollars are awarded. Of course, they deal with grant and recipients that need assistance every day. It's what they do. So I'm confident that they have a good handle on that, and they also understand the level of handholding that might be necessary with some of these groups to make sure that we're not, that their expectations are real, and that we're not leaving any money on the table at the end of the year, because they weren't able to utilize everything that had been allocated to them. They're all excellent points, and I think maybe putting together some definite timeframes would be helpful. So I think that's a great point.
Any others? I do have a question, Ms. Gay. Has there been any movement on the FEMA front in regards to the COVID relief? I know we had discussion that there were many things that were disallowed, not going to be allowed, and then I thought I heard someone say that some of that was loosening up. Has there been any movement, or can you give us an update on that?
I haven't heard that it's loosening up. I think did Alan leave? Oh, there's Alan. Alan can probably answer that question better than I can. We are not counting on a lot of reimbursement from FEMA. They have narrowed eligibility to the point where it's negligible in the grand scheme of things. So we're assuming, I mean, they assume we're going to use CARES Act money for most of this, but I don't know if there's.
You're absolutely correct. So FEMA has pretty much said it's for public safety. So fire, EMS, law enforcement, health, directly responding to COVID. Any mitigation, so mitigation would be like this plexiglass, mitigation would be anything related to schools, anything that we've done to enhance our government buildings, that should be CARES Act. That wouldn't be eligible for FEMA.
Any direct assistance,
Right.
you know, food assistance, anything like that is all CARES Act. The
Okay.
FEMA's really
Great.
limited.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes,
Quick
Mr.
question,
Laurie?
Mr. Chairman. I'd like to ask County Manager, can you just give us a quick update on the school system? I know that we've granted them X amount of millions of dollars. I just want to make sure that not only did they receive the money, but it's being spent and that we've met their needs and there's not any additional needs.
Well, as far as I know, we have, and they're not shy about letting us know if they don't. And we're prepared to assist. They are like us. They probably will have some needs that come up that they don't anticipate now.
Okay.
They have started drawing down on the funds. They have not received all of them because, as you know, a lot of it is on a reimbursement basis. So in some of the funding was for expenses that they anticipate incurring over the next several months. We were going to pay for additional electrical costs and things like that. So they've drawn down on some of the money, but not all of it.
Okay?
Okay. Commissioner Lockhart?
One thought, and when Nicole and I were talking about this, and Steve Fussell, we had a meeting last week, just kind of batting around some different ideas about how we could, the pre-qualification idea and what that might look like. My only concern that I shared, and I'm just going to bring it up so you all know what I said, is when we look at something like the low-income senior additional homestead exemption, we certainly have many seniors who don't own homes who wouldn't be able to benefit or be a part of that pre-qualification. And there may be some other things like that. While it makes complete sense that those folks would be in a pre-qualification mode because of that deduction, I don't want to unintentionally leave out a segment of our community because they have a different living arrangement, or there was another one that we were talking about, and I said, well, gosh, those folks probably wouldn't be on the radar in, months ago. They may not have qualified for that, but they're now in this circumstance, and it wouldn't have necessarily shown up in some type of an annual program that they would be qualified for. So that was my only hesitation and concern, is that there may be, in the attempt to pre-qualify, which makes complete sense and I love it, I don't want to unintentionally leave out some folks.
Sure. No, I concur completely in the numerous conversations that I've had with Ms. Guillet and staff is trying to look at that holistically and understand what needs may or may not be in the community and try and not let anybody fall through the cracks, which is difficult because
Almost
we
impossible.
don't always know, and sometimes we have to rely upon our nonprofits to help us understand and know when something's happening before, it really gets on our radar. So I've been made aware that they're interacting with those nonprofits on a regular basis. I know Mr. Harris is at the EOC. They're not shy about letting us know what needs are, and I think that's something that we need to really look at, through the rest of this CARES money and where it goes. And I don't know that I'll be quite as kind as Ms. Guillet, but I will tell you that my understanding of the state, I understand they're struggling. But the reality is this: we have counties in this state which got their money directly because they happen to have 30,000 more people in their community. They've already got their money. Most of it's been spent. By example, Orange County has spent a ton of money. They got theirs, right out of the box. We waited months before we ever got it from the state, and now we are sort of like, can you tell us all the ground rules? And hopefully the webinar today will help us understand. Is that webinar going to be recorded, do you know, or is it going to be?
Yeah, it'll be recorded.
Okay. So if you would pass that to the commission.
Absolutely.
And so we may want to go look at it ourselves.
Sure.
To understand what's being said from the state level.
And we do, I will say, DEM has assigned a specific person to be our grant person. They brought on several additional people. Every county has a grant person assigned, and they've been in constant contact with us. They were assigned just last week, but they've been talking with our folks every day, and so hopefully that will help. I think the DEM folks are learning stuff kind of at the same pace we are from other folks at the state level, so. So I will be kind to them because they're kind of in the same position we're in.
No, I totally understand. I've made several calls to the governor's office. I've talked to our lobbyists. I mean, I'm not sure how difficult it can really be. If the feds have given the guidelines and already given money directly to counties larger than ours, those guidelines should be able to be mirrored through the state. I think it's real simple,
Yeah,
in my opinion.
Not to sound paranoid, but it makes me worried, is there something else going on?
Well, that's my concern as well, but we can speculate. But where time's going to run out, we're not going to be able to help our community, which is what the intent of the CARES Act money was. And I think that's
Well, even if the
That's
state,
really a
even if
struggle.
the state wanted to hold back part of the money, they have to spend it by the end of
Right.
of the year too, so I don't,
As I've mentioned before, the Florida Association of Counties has continued to work with us and help us in doing this. One of the things, gems that I've received from them as far as information is that, and I think we've talked about this, is again, there are some concerns in some counties that they're having conflicts with their cities. And that's not our case.
No.
But as always, if it's a problem somewhere, then the state, specifically the governor's office, is trying to make sure that, that the situation is taken care of everywhere. So it's slowing us down too.
Right.
So I think that's the main objective that they have, is to ascertain what the problem is with the cities, counties in some cases, and alleviate that before they start allocating all the funds.
Yeah. No, I think we're blessed here in Seminole. All of our cities, we've been working hand in hand, lockstep, since this whole, health concern outbreak. We've kept them in the loop on the CARES Act and the whole 9 yards, so we're very thankful that that's occurred. So, okay, anything else on the
Call the question.
CARES Act? We got a motion, a second. I don't know that we need.
Could I clarify the motion? Could I ask for clarification on the motion?
County manager made some recommendations that she needed some approvals, and I made the motion to approve her recommendations.
Okay, they're all written in attachment A, and I didn't know if you wanted to mention that it encompasses all of the bullets on attachment A.
As presented us today in
Okay.
attachment A.
Any further questions? We'll roll call because we have one commissioner out. Commissioner Lockhart,
Aye.
Delary,
Aye.
Carey,
Aye.
Constantine,
Yes?
Zembauer, yes.
thank you.
Ms. Gay, you have direction?
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, now we'll move into our consent agenda. Pursuant to Florida law, the public has a right to be heard on all propositions except when the Board of County Commissioners is acting on ministerial or emergency matters or conducting a meeting exempt from Section 286.011 Florida statutes. Public comment time on propositions shall be 3 minutes for individuals and 6 minutes for group representatives. The right to be heard during quasi-judicial hearings is governed by Florida law. The public will be provided an opportunity to be heard on non-agenda matters at the end of the meeting. Proper decorum will be observed. If members of the public would like to make a comment or are attending the meeting in person, you'll be called on first. If using a computer, iPad, or other electronic devices, click on the raise hand feature and you'll be called on next. Lastly, if you've called in on a telephone, you can raise your hand by pressing *9. You'll be called on in the order you have raised your hand. Do we have anyone here from the public who would like to comment on consent items 1 through 10? Clint, do we have anybody on the line?
Yes, sir.
Nobody on the line? Nobody?
Sir, we do. We do have someone on the line.
Okay, please bring them in.
They've lowered their hand.
Okay, so we don't have anybody on.
Back up again. Let me bring them in.
Let me know when they're in, Clint, because I cannot see it on my screen yet. Good morning, Ms. Milch. Are you with us?
Yes, I
Okay,
think
which,
so.
good morning. Which agenda item are you here to speak through? Item 1 through 10?
Good morning. I have a question. Yes, I have a question regarding the demolishment of the flood home on 115 Wisteria Drive in the Little Wekiva Basin. It's item 4, I believe. I
Correct.
would like to understand a little bit more of the history of that demolition, or, what the need is for that, and are there other homes in that area that need to be demolished? Thank you.
Okay, sure. Mr. Harris, I think this is your division. If you would be so kind to answer this question if you could.
Sure, this is a severe repetitive loss property. This individual, the homeowner, has flooded multitudes of times. So about a year and a half ago, we put in an application to FEMA to procure the home at the homeowner's request. We will purchase the home. We've done this on a couple properties to lower insurance costs, of course, across Seminole County, as insurance costs continue to rise when an individual continues to flood over and over and over again. They have to meet certain standards to be approved for this type of grant, and they met all those standards based on the Federal Emergency Management Agency requirements. So the agenda item is to procure the home, and then we will demolish the home. The home will, nothing will be allowed to be placed on that property once we do so.
Okay. All right, Ms. Milch, does that answer your question?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. We appreciate your time. Be well.
Be well.
Okay, Clint, do we have anybody else online?
No, sir.
You want to give it just a second, and I'll go to the public. Anyone else here in the audience on item consent agendas 1 through 10? Seeing none. Clint, last chance, last try, final answer?
No hands.
All right. All right, my fellow commissioners, I will look for action on 1 through 10.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to approve agenda items number 1 through 10.
Second.
Motion is second. Any further discussion? We'll call roll. Commissioner Lockhart,
Aye.
Commissioner Delary,
Aye.
Commissioner Carey,
Aye.
Commissioner Constantine.
Yes.
Commissioner Zimbauer, yes. Items 1 through 10 will move forward. Thank you all very much, those in attendance that were here, as well as those who called in. We appreciate your patience with our working through the technology challenge that we often have. Okay, next item, do we have any commissioners or staff members or public that would like to make any comments?
Chairman,
Clint?
I know I don't have it on the agenda, but I do have a very short county manager's report. A couple of things have come up since the agenda was printed, and I've been asked for a couple of updates on things, so if you
Okay.
can give me 5
Yeah,
to 10 minutes.
let's go ahead and take whatever report you have. And Clint, if you have anyone online that wishes to address the commission, if you would please queue them up for us, and then we'll go to those right after Ms. Guillet is completed, give us a report. Okay, Ms. Gay?
The first item I have is an action item for the board. As you'll all recall, this happens just about every year. We get this request. The tax collector has reached out to us to get authorization to move forward with collection of the tax roll beginning November 1. In light, despite the fact that the VAB board hearings have not concluded, we find ourselves in this position from time to time. It has been especially challenging this year for the property appraiser to get through that process. So under the statute, you do have the ability to authorize collection to begin prior to the conclusion of all the VAB hearings, and I'm just looking for a motion to that effect.
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Second.
Any conversation, questions? Seeing none, we'll call roll. Commissioner Lockhart,
Aye.
Commissioner Delary,
Aye.
Commissioner Carey,
Aye.
Commissioner Constantine?
Yes.
Mr. Zimbauer, yes.
Thank you. Now, I have a couple of just quick updates. Some of you have asked me for the status on some ongoing issues. We do have a lot going on outside of CARES Act and COVID. So I'll just quickly run through them so that everybody gets the update. First on the list is, at the last meeting, we talked about putting together a process for consideration of acquisition of golf courses. We are working on that. There are a number, the more we talk about it, there are more things that need to go on the list. We will bring a proposed process. Commissioner Lockhart suggested that we put together a process that could be utilized should this issue come up again. So we're going to bring forward just sort of a policy that would say if we are faced with this situation, these are the things that we would consider, and these are anticipated costs specifically related to the Deer Run Wekiva issue that you talked about, but also things that we would consider under any circumstance, any similar circumstance. So we'll bring that to you at the next meeting just to get your blessing and get some direction from you based on that as to what you would like us to do with the specific issue that was raised 2 weeks ago.
Okay.
So you can look for that at the next meeting. A couple of other property-related issues that I'd like to update you on. Rosenwald, you had some presentations on that recently and decided we would regroup a little bit. Joe has met with most, if not all of you, to get some direct feedback. We will also be bringing a proposal to you on how we move forward on that, and probably by the next meeting. So thank you all for your input. I know Joe's gotten some great suggestions, and he's trying
What
to.
you're missing is the facial expression behind your head. It's priceless.
Well, he's characterized it to me as great input, so thank you for that. Another property that we've talked about recently here is that we received some proposals for property that we own at Red Cleveland and East Lake Mary Boulevard. You directed staff to put together information to put that out to bid for highest and best use. I just wanted to give you an update that the appraisal on that piece of property is expected to be delivered this week. So as we get that, we'll continue to update you on that. Just wanted to give you, we received a letter this week, just give you some good news. We are closing out the final closeout on the Altamont Springs CRA. We got another check from them, but unfortunately, our last check from them, it's about $227,000, but that represents the final closeout on that CRA. So just so you're all aware of that. I wanted to let you know that we're working on putting together a policy for project notification. This discussion started back with the English Estate Sidewalk project. We've had it come up a couple more times. Folks have, some communities have not felt like they are notified adequately about projects that we might be doing in their area. So we're putting together, Joe's put sort of a task force together to come up with some policies on how we would notify neighborhoods of any kind of work we're doing there, anything from sidewalks and resurfacing to more significant projects, and to give you an idea of when that would occur and what level, depending on the level of the project, the level of notification that would be required. So we'll bring that back to you. I just wanted you to know that they're working on that, and we hope to have sort of a comprehensive program that would not only apply to public works projects, but also to leisure projects and environmental services projects. So hopefully we can make sure that the community is aware of any work that we might be doing and what those projects might mean. And then another issue that's come up this week, it's come up not just this week, but a number of times over the last couple of years, has been shoreline protection. As some of you may be aware, DEP used, not DEP, FWC used to manage any sort of shoreline clearing or shoreline impacts on lakes that were 10 acres or larger. In 2018, they changed their rules, and they're only dealing with lakes that are 160 acres or larger, which leaves about 200 lakes in our county that are no longer monitored by FWC. So our staff has been working on a shoreline protection ordinance. As you can imagine, there are some competing interests on what that should look like. It is another level of regulation, so we're approaching it very judiciously. but I know that the issue has come up just recently. Commissioner Constantine has mentioned it several times over the last couple of years. Commissioner Delory raised the issue just recently. I wanted you to know that we are working on it. We're kind of in the home stretch of that, and that's something that will be coming before you in the very near future. So just so you know, that's kind of where we are on that. And
Ms. Nicole, if we could just expedite it somehow, that'd be great.
Sure, absolutely. We've got about 200 lakes, as I mentioned, and there are about 19 lakes where we've gotten some sort of report of clearing that may not have been consistent with the former guidelines under FWC. So it's not a huge problem, but it's something that could start to grow. So so we will be bringing that forward, and I just wanted you to have that on your radar.
If I could just piggyback, if you don't mind, what goes along with the conversation about informing the community of projects that we're doing, I think communicating the conversation about shoreline regulation is going to be very, very important. And I think most folks who live on lakes that would fall into that category have really good intentions and want to be good stewards. And I think education, more than anything, is probably going to help ensure compliance with whatever we come forward with. But my heart skipped just a little bit of a beat there when we talk about bringing forward a regulation, and as far as I know, out in the community, there's been no discussion about it. And so I would just throw that out there as a little, like, maybe we need to think about a communication plan to
Absolutely.
go along with this.
And Commissioner, if I can, you know, one of the reasons a couple of years ago that I brought this up, and we've been working with the staff, and Kim Warnberg has been working on it, and I know that Commissioner Delory has talked to some people recently. As one that lives on a lake that's, you know, has a lot of boating activity and other recreational activity, you know, people, like you say, want to do the right thing, but they don't realize, you know, when they're taking out certain weeds, they're actually harming the lake. When and the DEP and the St. John's has really de-emphasized this, as the county manager has said, on less, you know, not the big lakes. But those are the problems, because that's the first place where the water goes into. It's important that to do that, and you know, there are a lot of specific regulations, as you say, that need to be educated. They want to do the right thing, but then again, you see a lot of people that are just stripping their whole lakefront, and that's the wrong, you know, that's the wrong thing too. So, you know, we have to, as we've always done, when we do regulation, we also do an education program, and I think that's a very wise suggestion and something that we seem to do quite well usually.
I would concur. It's been on the radar since I was on P and Z. It came before us in P and Z.
You are on the P and Z, and, you know, you and I would talk
we still
about it all the
haven't got
time.
So,
And Mr. Chairman, from my understanding, staff's close. Let's just need to bring it up, educate the public, and bring it to the forum.
yep. All right.
All right, and one last thing for you, November's meetings. We have one regularly scheduled meeting in November. Normally we only meet once because of the Thanksgiving holiday. And the first meeting of the month is typically a work session meeting. I just want to let you know that we're going to treat it as a regular business meeting, because it's the only opportunity we'll really have during the month. So unless there's any objection, we will do that. And then we have got the reorganization meeting scheduled for, the regular meeting would occur on November 10th. We have the reorganization meeting scheduled for November 17th at 9:30. At that time, we know that we're going to have one new commissioner coming in District 5. So we'll do the swearing in, and then the reorganization as you normally do it. So I just wanted to get that out there publicly, and let you know that we're making arrangements and plans for that. Unless there's any objection, we're going to continue to forge forward with that.
No, I think that's acceptable. Anybody on the board have any concerns with those dates, 10th and 17th? Of course, also I'd remind staff that the governor's order expires on November 1st for virtual meetings, so I would like to make sure that our staff is fully up to speed on being able to turn and react on how we're going to handle moving forward with public hearings. not only in the BCC, but the other boards. I think we need to get some of the other boards caught up. But if the governor decides not to reissue an order past November 1st, I think we need to be making some decisions quickly.
Well, and if we could talk about that, look, I'd like to do that now if we could, because the governor's order relates to the ability for the board to be remote. It doesn't really talk about, it doesn't talk about public being remote. And so I would like some direction from the board that, do you want to go completely live, or do you want to still have the opportunity for the public to attend remotely? You can do that regardless of the governor's order. His order just really relates to whether or not you need to be here in person. So any direction you can give us on that would be really helpful.
Mr. Chairman?
Yeah, so,
Yeah, I, for one, think this is a wonderful opportunity to get the public involved. So I think that, we should do it, the hybrid, both live and remote. Yeah, I've heard a lot of really positive comments about the ability. And if I watched the Planning and Zoning Board meeting the other day, and on Zoom, and I got to tell you, half the people came up live, half of them over the phone. So I really think that this is an opportunity, and then no one can think that they don't have the opportunity, even if they're in Cleveland, Ohio, they could still call in, and hopefully they're still our constituents and just being on vacation, although I don't know why anybody would go to Cleveland for vacation. But, I'm just using that as, actually, that's not true. I went there once on a meeting, and it was really nice, okay? So I'm just...
Mr. Chairman?
Well, I mean, the remote access is for folks to stay safe. It's really
right.
the intent, so I just,
Commissioner Laurie?
I believe it's important to keep our citizens safe, and I have no problem with the hybrid that we're doing now. And hopefully the city of Cleveland will understand the comments that Mr. Constantine made.
Cleveland tourism is going to be ringing on you shortly.
Right, exactly.
I would concur. I think that for as long as the governor has the state of emergency in place for the state of Florida, any citizen who would feel unsafe
Correct.
for whatever reason should have the opportunity
do that.
to participate remotely. And when that executive order is lifted, then maybe we can reevaluate. But honestly, I think it's been, I mean, I know there were a lot of bumps and hiccups to get us to this place.
Right.
And I know it's certainly an extra burden on you as the chairman to try to navigate making it all work. And poor Clint.
And staff and Clint and all those guys.
The man behind the screen there. I know it's more to juggle, but I think the benefit that I'm hearing from citizens who have been able to participate, it may really be very
Agreed.
worth it.
Yeah, I agree completely. So it sounds like we want to continue this format until the state of emergency is lifted. Is that a fair
At
assumption?
least.
Or do you want to reevaluate at a different time, or?
Presently,
I think that's what I'm hearing. I mean, I think that makes sense.
presently, just keep the format we have until otherwise noticed.
Okay.
Yeah, I think the state of emergency would be, in my mind, the indicator that things have changed, but
Right.
I mean, we could
Yeah, okay.
certainly change our minds if
All
we
right.
wanted to before then.
Continue it, yeah.
Commissioner Carey, do you have any input?
Well, you've already got the technology set up and the ability to do the hybrid meetings. I think anytime you expand the ability of the public to participate is a plus. And, and while all staff has a lot to cover, this is only 2 days a month. So I'm sure that Clint can handle it, and I think it's better for the public.
It's a long 2 days.
That's right. Well, then all the other board meetings and the other,
Yeah, it's not
you
ju-
know,
it's not just
not just the
BCC.
BCC, but, okay, good. So I think we have direction on that.
thank you, appreciate it.
Anything else, Ms. Gay?
That's all I've got for you.
Digressing a little bit, back to the golf course issue. I was on the CFWI meeting. I want to make sure that we follow up with Lake County. Lake County has recently worked with DEP and St. John's on some modeling of benefits and what those cost analysis would be or benefits may be to the public. So if we could just make sure we follow up on that. And that's all I have for that segment. Anybody else for anything that was covered by Ms. Gay?
Nope.
Mr. Applegate, do you have anything from the county attorney's office?
Just briefly, we provided your offices with a memo last week on Bright Line and the MOU. That's kind of morphed into now a resolution of support. We will bring that to you next meeting. It's still being tweaked by some of the partners, so there's nothing in final yet. The resolution basically softens what the MOU had in it, so it's basically your approval will just follow up from your approval of the MOU. So we will continue to keep you posted by memo during the next 2 weeks as the working group progresses on that, so that you'll have the information before your next meeting.
Very well, thank you. Any questions for the county attorney's office? Seeing none. Clint, do we have anyone on the public that wishes to address the commission?
Yes, sir.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
Yes, sir.
Okay, please bring them in. Well, you'll have to forgive me because I can't
Yeah.
see the whole name, but no, there it is. Cheryl Bollinger?
Yes, good morning. Good morning,
ma'am.
Commissioners.
If you would give us your full name and address for the record?
Yes, my name is Cheryl Boulanger. I am a Seminole County resident at 413 Whitcomb Drive in Geneva, Florida. And I'd like to talk to you or comment today on the Lake Harney Basin study that I believe you have in a working session on your agenda later today.
Okay, please proceed.
Yep. So first of all, thank you to the commission and for letting us speak and letting me do this remotely so I can stay safe. I appreciate your efforts to keep our residents safe. And thank you to Commissioner Delary, who has been personally to some of our homes to see the impacts and why this study is important to us. So, excuse me, as you all know, we had an unprecedented event in 2018, which was Hurricane Irma. In this area in Whitcomb Drive, that left us flooded in for a total of 64 days before we were removed out of flood stages. It was 56 days before some of us could even drive our vehicles into our homes, onto our properties. It was a devastating event for us. And as you all know, we sit here right now in action and flood stages in parts of Seminole County, including Lake Harney. So we're one major event away from being in the same circumstances we were in 2018 with Hurricane Irma. So how does this impact us and our way of life, particularly here on Whitcomb Drive? When we're even in moderate flood stage, the homes on Whitcomb Drive are literally on an island. We're blocked off from accessing our community via the roadways. We have to boat, kayak, canoe in, everyday things that we need. Or we need to wade through dangerous waters to leave our homes and do the things that we need to do to live our everyday lives. There are a few huge problems that I want to pinpoint for you. One is road identification. If any of you have ever ridden Whitcomb Drive, there are very deep ditches on both sides of Whitcomb. When the water is flooded, and when I moved here, I said, this is crazy. You'll be able to tell where the road is. You drive that road every day. It's very dangerous. You cannot identify or determine where the edges of the roadway are. We had several vehicles during the Irma floods that went into the ditches, including news vehicles and FP&L and some of the other electric services that were here. Emergency vehicles, when the floodwaters were at their crest, emergency vehicles were unable to access our roads. So if we had a 911 emergency or medical emergency of any type, we would have been under dire straits to get ourselves those care. There's wildlife, right? We have alligators in Lake Harney. It's part of life when you live here. It's different when you're on an island and you have them surrounding your home with snakes and eels and stingrays. We had 2 fish kills, which were, I'm sure, some type of health hazard to us. We all have septic systems out here. The water was standing with our septic systems, some of them compromised.
Cheryl, I don't want to cut you short, but
Yeah.
we're moving on to our 4 out of 3 minutes.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry. So just everyday groceries, mail, trash pickup, those things you can't do. So the improvements presented in this proposal, we've waited 2 years for this study since Irma. I urge the commission, these improvements, to approve this. Our lives would be easier as we face the flood damages in the future if we had some of the improvements that are proposed in this proposal. Thank you for the extra time.
Yes, ma'am.
I appreciate it.
Thank you, and be well. Clint, do we have anyone else?
Yes, sir.
Please. Miss Mary Carls? Miss Carls? Clint, looks like her microphone is off.
Sorry about that. I'm here.
Hello, Miss Carls, if you would, your name and address for the record, please?
Mary Carls, 431 Daytona Avenue in Longwood.
And what matter are you here to address to the board?
The Rolling Hills Park.
Okay?
And I actually, I registered twice for this meeting, both for positive and negative comments, because I have both, but I wanted to first express my appreciation for allowing me to speak, and then also for your efforts, successful efforts in preserving this green space for the county. I appreciate the plans that have been made. But today I'd like to address my comments to Parcel 4, which is designated as the Pine Flats and the Highlands. It's east of Palm Springs. Excuse me. The latest master plan shows parking lots placed in front of the houses, which have very shallow front yards, facing Daytona and Sanford Avenues, with a very large dog park beyond those parking lots, consuming basically the entire fairway that we've lived on since 1978. Daytona Avenue is a short, narrow, quiet, and rarely traveled street. The same is true for Ohio and Sanford. There are only 4 homes on Daytona Avenue that face the park, and only 2 of those have driveway access onto the street. The other 2 are accessed from the rear of their properties on Allison. The streets in this area, those 3 that I have mentioned, are not wide enough for 2 cars to pass at once, and are not throughways to anywhere. Basically, only the residents, their guests, and service providers drive on these 3 streets. This is one of the quietest areas in this neighborhood. The proposal to place parking lots directly in front of the homes on Daytona and Sanford Avenues would be devastating to this area. It would reduce the value of our properties and the quality of life that we enjoy here. And it would bring traffic into a residential neighborhood where there has been none, and the risks inherent in that. This is a quiet area where sandhill cranes roam, and people of all ages walk with their pets, and children play in on these quiet streets and in these open areas. Our view of over 40 years would become a paved parking lot directly abutting our front yards, not directly, there's a narrow street in between, with a backdrop of a fence surrounding an enormous dog park, basically, as I said, consuming the fairway. This is not a park in the middle of an open space. It is close within a well and long-established residential area, and I think that needs to be taken into consideration. The park has frontage on
Ms. Carls, we're
three-
going to ask you to try to wrap it up. We're pushing past our
Okay.
3 minutes.
Okay, I'm almost done. Thank you for your consideration.
Yes, ma'am.
The park has frontage on 3 DOT-compliant roads, Raymond, North, and Palm Springs. I'd respectfully suggest that these are more appropriate locations for off-street parking and smaller dog parks spread throughout the park areas and not directly adjacent to homes. Palm Springs in particular has a long frontage on the Long Green and the North Mall, where traffic will already be slowed by the planned traffic circles, which is a great idea. Thank you for your time and your consideration.
Thank you, Ms. Carls. Be well.
You too.
Okay, Clint, make sure that the callers that are calling in are not calling in for the work sessions. We're getting into some work session discussions and calls. The calls that we should be taking now are for anyone that wants to address the commission on topics that are not on this agenda or work session, or anything new to be brought forward. Do we have anybody like that on the line? If you can just verify that. I don't want to get the public input on items that the commission has not fully seen from our staff, so we stay consistent with the topics.
No other hands, sir.
No other hands? Thank you very much. Anyone else here from the public wish to address the commission? Any of the commissioners desire anything for future agendas that's not already been discussed? Okay, seeing none, then we will adjourn the commission meeting and work towards the BCC work sessions. We're going to take a quick 10-minute break. If everybody back here in 10 minutes, we'll get started with the work sessions. We're going to start the BCC work sessions. We're going to start with Leisure Services, Mr. Rick Durr. The director will present the East County Trails Master Plan update, and then he is going to move on to item 12, which is the Rolling Hills Trails Master Plan. I've asked him to try to get through both of these so we can get a lunch break at noon. So keeping that in mind, let's get going, Mr. Durr, and thank you very much.
Mr. Chairman, can I ask Mr. Durr if he would comment on the one lady's comments, so, that you just heard, that called in? I appreciate it. That way we don't have to ask. You can just go through it. Thank you, sir. Very good. Thank you.
My glasses are tied up in my mask here. Just one second. So for the record, good morning. Richard Durr, Leisure Services Director for Seminole County. Commenting on the call that you just had regarding a dog park on Daytona regarding Rolling Hills.
You're going to the other one first. Do it
Oh,
when
yeah.
you get
You
to
want
Rolling
me to
Hills.
wait till then? That's fine.
Yeah, wait till you get to Rolling Hills.
Sorry we got
All
the
right.
callers.
So if I neglect to say something, please
Okay,
remind
thank
me as
you.
we go
Oh,
through it.
we're not shy about that.
So first, thanks again very much for this morning work session. We wanted to give you a very brief overview of the project that's ongoing. We're right about in the middle of it, and give you the opportunity to really comment, see some of the public comments that we've received throughout the project right now, as well as some clues into what is to come going forward and the next time that we'll be before you, the kinds of things that you'll be seeing out of this project. First, I'm going to introduce some folks behind me. Sherry Williams, who's our project manager at the county. Did you wave?
She waved.
Okay, that's good. I'm just making sure. Bill Panos, Division Manager at Greenways Natural Lands Division, and Bruce Hall, who is the lead of our consultant team at SNME. But I also wanted to acknowledge the work being done by lots of different staff on this one, including the Parks and Preservation Advisory Committee. These folks have been very instrumental in getting us this far, especially County GIS, as well as engineering and the rest of our leisure services team. The last time we were before you, we were updating you on the trail system overall master plan and the state of the county, if you will, back in August of last year. And we showed you some graphics about here's where we are with the existing trail system. And at that time, we're in the process of updating our 2013 master plan, and we were working with the PPAC, or the Parks and Preservation Advisory Commission, to do so. And I wanted to publicly acknowledge the efforts of those folks, both current and past members who've been working on the parks update and the trails update over the last 2 years, and they've been extremely instrumental and helpful. They are an extremely competent group, and we really appreciate the work that they've done on behalf of the county moving forward. As part of that process, we had reached out to all of our partners in the area, making sure that we had all of their current trails and future trails master plans, and that we were able to incorporate that in this process. At that time, we told you that we had the Eastern Seminole Unpaved Trails Study that was also on tap as part of the fiscal year 1920 budget, as part of the infrastructure sales tax. And at that time, we went ahead and knitted these two efforts together. So we weren't working in a silo. We wanted to make sure that we had both highlight the eastern part of the county, but at the same time knit that into the effort that was being done to update the entire county map. So we're going to show you both of those today as we proceed forward. The scope of the project right now, we are basically right in the middle of the project. And we had, unfortunately, this project was scoped just before COVID. We kicked it off during the stay-at-home order, which made for some real interesting maneuverability on the consultant side and on the staff side. But we went ahead and went through with moving forward with the process, and then made an adjustment to the phase that we're in right now, which is the public participation phase. And I'll show you how we were able to change that and adapt to the times right now and still give folks the ability to comment on this process going forward. So how did we get to where we are today? We went all the way back to the original vision and the vision plan that was put together in the mid-90s that identified a vision for our Greenways and Trails plan and really keyed out some of the large projects that we know and have come to pass today. But more specifically, we wanted to make sure that we were capturing those thoughts and carrying them forward through this effort as we continue to refine the plan. Now, there were 4 main focus areas of that particular plan, and we wanted to acknowledge those because we think they're still valid today. that this would be a path system or a greenway system that would have a strong recreation component from everything from walking to equestrian uses, that this would create connections between everything from neighborhoods to parks and natural areas and activity centers, such as places of business, or folks could take this to work. That it would be part of our transportation system, that it would allow folks to move around the county without necessarily having to use a vehicle. And that last but certainly not least is that this would enhance and revitalize existing neighborhoods and really deal with the quality of life here in Seminole County. And I think without a doubt, everything that we continue to hear from folks on a daily basis is that the Trails program has meant that to the county and county residents going forward. So the first step in the plan is to make sure that we have the most current data. The last time we did this effort was in 2013. And as I'd said, the PPAC was looking at all that data and getting the updates. So first and foremost, we took the more regional look, and there's a lot of different trails projects that are going on statewide that are being championed by the state that directly impact and plug into our trail system. So from the Coast to Coast Trail to the St. Johns River to Sea Loop, those would make connections in our county or to our county, as well as the Florida National Scenic Trail. And while all of these projects are ongoing and they connect to our existing trail system, they will create regional connections statewide for us. Zooming in a little bit closer, we worked with our partners in adjacent counties to make sure we had their current trails plans. And while we've accounted for all those, one piece to highlight on the lower center of the screen, that red line that says D3, there has at one point or another been a shift in Orange County's future trails plan. So our two trails don't quite line up right now, and that's something that we'll look at as we go forward. So then getting into the county, we made sure that once again we contacted all of our partners that have been both participating with us in the infrastructure sales tax initiative, looking at existing and future trails projects and getting the status on all of those so that the data we were showing and the data that we moved forward with, we were confident in was current. So you put all that stuff on the map and you start to see this network of red lines that we've identified here, both dashed lines for current or future projects and solid lines for existing trails. That added to all of the other data that we received on all of the other parts of our trail system. So not just the trails, but our trailheads and then our safety features and amenities, making sure all of those were inventoried and were part of our database resource going forward. Now, let me go back for 1 second. The one thing that became apparent as we were looking at this, and there's been some discussion about this over the last year or so as we talk about our maturing trail system, is that one red line is not the same as another red line. That as we built different types of projects, there's certainly different types of experiences, and we've kind of all put them under the heading of trails. Well, one thing that we thought would be very helpful as we move forward in projecting out both current and future projects was to give a little bit of structure to that system. So like we have a classification system for roadways of everything from a freeway all the way down to a local neighborhood street, we tried to build a similar type of classification system for our current and future trails projects. So looking at the dedicated right-of-ways where we have wide trails going through, such as the Seminole-Wekiva Trail, and looking at all types of projects that we call trails and knit together into a cohesive trail system, we came up with a classification system or a series of terms. And while we haven't necessarily settled in on these terms, we're using these going forward as working titles. And when we return to you back with the actual master plan, we'll have refined these going forward. So what that basically means is that we've been able to provide some definition and some classifications to articulate these types of projects. So the first type, signature trails, for example, these are our wide existing paths. They're generally regional connections, so our Seminole-Wekiva Trail, our Cross Seminole Trail, that connect to trails outside the county. These are our major trails within dedicated right-of-ways. They may or may not be paved, as we see with the Flagler Trail. So in this case, in the more rural area, it still has that same meaning to it, and it's posted and signed as a trail, but it allows for the different types of travel that you have out in the rural area. The next section down of that are really the wider pathways that are being constructed directly adjacent to travel lanes within road right-of-ways. So we call these paths. In this case, you're much closer to a travel lane of existing automobile traffic, and that we acknowledge that these as very critical to making connections to our trail system, but they are a very different experience for the user. The next section down, we call them connectors, and these are much shorter roadways or paths within a roadway system. And in this case, these types of roadways are much more low stress. So the type of experience that you have on these wouldn't say be the same as being next to travel lane on 1792, but they're just as important to make pedestrian connections between our trail system and major centers of activity. Last but not least are our wilderness trails, and that's somewhat self-explanatory. And we have over 80 miles of these marked and signed throughout the county, generally linking between preserved lands or other county lands and providing a lot of those linkages to our existing pathways. So the next part of this was then to take that hierarchy and kind of wash that through the database. And some of these lines turn blue and some of them turn this orangish yellow. But they start to delineate different types of trails now within our trails map. Now, the one thing we needed to make sure, it's one thing to map all the trails, it's another thing to make sure that we've mapped the places where they're going or the places we need to connect people to. So going back to our original vision and the 4 different types of components that we needed to map, we kind of sprinkled this inventory of confetti across the map and making sure that each one of these places were located. So making sure we had all of the schools located on the most current maps, all the way down to the Sunrail stations and being able to show linkages to those. So once we're able to do that, our consultant team and staff was able to take our existing map, again, wash through this and look for other opportunities to make those connections and identify those opportunities. So this is the map that we've put together. This is a preliminary map that is currently available online for folks to comment on, and it includes both the existing trail system again and potential opportunities or future trails projects. So at this point is when we typically put together, let's go out and have some public meetings. We had programmed into the scope at least 4 public meetings. They'd be held in different sections of the county. We meet with people on different times of the day. We meet with people in different areas of the county to provide at least a wide range of opportunities for folks to comment on the process. And then we would advertise and do some of the typical things that we would do to advertise the public outreach and then facilitate those meetings. Well, obviously, the community meeting part is going to be a little difficult right now. So we worked with our consultant to come up with a possible alternative. And this is happening everywhere across the country and probably dare say the world where you have public projects that are going on. How do you then afford availability to folks to be able to participate remotely? And in this case, the formal title of this platform is called Social Pinpoint. And it's a program that our consultant had worked on before and had been working on before to help facilitate public comment in and coming in remotely and still provide a number of different ways to do that. So we went through the process of here's what we would have prepared for a public meeting, and then how can we translate that into a platform where folks can still access the same information, but do it at their convenience and do it online and remotely and allow people to stay safe. So we had some of the same components that we would have had in the in-person meetings. One of the things that did allow us to do, however, is to expand that and expand our toolkit. So the idea of having a discussion forum, that we have folks to be able to take an online survey and still provide that input, we provided those through the Social Pinpoint platform. And then we went through and went through the public outreach or the advertising portion like we normally would have. And in this case, we made sure, since this was really our first foray into doing a lot of online participation, that we were checking weekly as what the numbers were. If we weren't seeing a very good response from the folks, what did we need to tweak as we went? And the good news is that we were already seeing a lot of good public response and good numbers going forward through this. So it gave us good confidence that we were on the right track. So on that platform, we were basically asking the public 2 things. Comment on our existing trail system. Where are there areas that we need to maybe fine tune, and what are some needs that we may have in the existing system? And then secondly, looking at current and future projects, let us know about those. Are there other projects that we need to think about or other things that we need to think about going forward as we update the master plan? So when folks arrived at the website, they'd see something like this. This is a screenshot of the splash page of the website. And they scroll down a little bit further and see a series of 5 different short presentations. The first one was the introduction. All told, there's about 25 minutes worth of video for your viewing pleasure. And And then when you scroll down a little further from that, you could download all of those presentations. So you could have those on your own personal device to look at those as you saw fit. And then we cross-advertised and cross-promoted the fact that we were also doing the Rolling Hills site. So we were able to see a little bit of benefit from that as well. Now, when you went onto the interactive map, you were able to take what's called a virtual pushpin and locate any place in the county along the trail system, any type of comment that you wanted to make. So this is a snapshot of what that map looked like about a week and a half ago as we went through it. So you see comments all the way across the board in all areas of the county. You are also to go ahead in the middle box right there to share your input and take a survey, or leave a comment. So this was the discussion area as we went forward through it. Then this was launched on September the 2nd, and then it was time to really work at getting the word out. From putting magnetic signs on county vehicles to having this posted on the county's website, to signs, I've got a couple of them sitting out right here that we put out at our facilities across the county, to posting on Facebook on a weekly basis, as well as reaching out with Nextdoor, but using all of those tools to continue to push the word out and in order to solicit responses back from the public. So how have we done? As of last week, and let me note before I tell you that, this platform is still taking comments. So part of this meeting is to get the word out and let folks know that they can still leave their comments as going forward. But as of last Monday, we had 1,300 individual unique users on the website. That's a lot. Would have never expected to see 1,300 people showing up to community meetings like this, asking general large picture opinions on their ideas about the trails. Those 1,300 users left 143 comments on the map alone. As of last Monday, we had 96 people take the survey, and almost 400 people, or over 300 and well over 380 people, just watched the Chapter 4 video alone, which that was talking about the current and future trail system. So that's a pretty good public response. I think we're fairly happy with that. And as I said, this is my other pitch to go ahead and folks to participate in the process. Now, some of the preliminary information that we've received back from the public, we've had very specific comments regarding maintenance issues, to safety concerns, to crossings and intersections, both on the existing system and on the future trail system. And we had folks comment on that they would like to see better connections to our Sunrail stations. So we got some really good input from that already as we move forward. On the survey of the nearly 100 people that have responded, some of the data that's come back has been some of the things that we've seen consistently. We had a telephone survey that was done earlier this year that helped also give us some opinions on the trail system, that predominantly folks perceive the trail system to be very clean and very safe, which is a great thing to see and a great thing to hear from our public, as well as if there were greater opportunities for greater connections to things like parks and restaurants and local businesses. Those would be experiences they'd love to be able to enjoy more often on our trail system. So again, I told you I'd have a little pitch. This particular address across the screen, if you get your phone ready, take a picture of your screen. I will show this again at the very end of the presentation, so you can get this address down. But it's pretty simple: semeinc.com/Seminole-County-Trails. So again, I'll show this up at the very end of the presentation as well. So what's next in the process? As we take and continue to collect all of this public input, we're going to have a meeting with the PPAC at the end of this month to go through this in a finer grain of detail. We'll then go ahead and wash through the maps and put together a series of graphics and this big monster book that will accompany the process. That is next on the process, so we'll have a final updated GIS plan that will be available for all of county use going forward. Again, we'll have a book. This is kind of what the cover looks like. The table of contents will include an executive summary. We'll have breakout plans for proposed corridor details and plans, an implementation plan, and something that compiled all of the public involvement that we've had throughout the course of the process. So examples of what those plans might look like. We'll have some text descriptions, something that describe the opportunities of a potential trail system, some photographs of it, and where it's located in the county. So we'll have some good data to go on and outline those potential projects. We'll have a cost estimate, or at least our best estimate at this time, based upon the data that we have, and an implementation program that includes a way to prioritize projects. One of the things that we developed working with the PPAC, and this is to their credit, back in 2018, is that as we looked at future trail corridors, it'd be great to have a system to prioritize these things on such factors from cost, all the way down to the type of trail that it is and the types of connections that it makes throughout the county. So then last, one of the things I wanted to leave you with as we look at the east side is share with you some of the opportunities that we're looking at and that we'll be refining in the plan as we go forward. First is one of the things that we continue to hear from folks on, especially in the Black Hammock community, is additional connections and equestrian connections through the neighborhood to some of our natural lands properties. So we'll be looking at that and how to implement that. We still have a small gap in the downtown Oviedo connection that we want to memorialize how we're going to move forward on tying that together. We've got on Old Lockwood and Lockwood future connections to the UCF area that are probably pretty critical for pedestrian use going back and forth between the county line. And we want to capture those as potential projects going forward. Looking at the county-owned portions of the Power Line Trail up on the north side, north of Lake Harney, what's the potential there, as well as south of the Flagler Trail between State Road 46 and the Lake Proctor Wilderness area. We've got the gap right now on the Flagler Trail. We've talked about how do we close that, and we'll look at some recommendations on how to do that. Snow Hill Road might provide some opportunities as well, especially as we go through the state forest in that area with all of those dark green connections pretty much linking up with Snow Hill Road. We've got some potential in the Chuliota area where we currently have the Flagler Trail signed, but if in some of these areas, if the signs weren't there, you really can't tell that it's there. So especially in some of the more urbanized areas or the more developed neighborhoods, is there the possibility of paving some of that section? We've got some county land on Lake Catherine we're going to look at. They may be a potential site of a future trailhead. So that'll be part of our analysis and our recommendations going forward. Further identifying and solidifying the Florida National Scenic Trails connection all the way out to the Chuliota Wilderness area. And then lastly, making the adjustment in the Flagler Trail to make sure that we're lining up with Orange County's plans to link to our county line. So that's some of what you'll see as we proceed forward. Again, I wanted to get your comments as this project moves ahead and your questions as well. And for those of you that want to participate, please do. Please feel free to take a picture of the screen quickly. And then please join us. This will be open all the way through the end of this week. And then we'll be able to start combing through those comments and questions. And with that, thank you very much.
Great, thank you very much, Mr. Durr. A couple comments. Making lemonade out of lemons during this pandemic. Is our PIO posting this on all of our public push out during the pandemic? It's on the EOC websites and all that?
Yeah, we've asked and we've worked with Ashley and her group to push these out at particular times. The critical part is we wanted to make sure we weren't intersecting with other critical emergency information that's going out.
No,
so
sure.
it's taken a lot of coordination that way. But we've been able to keep those messages going out almost on a weekly basis.
Great. And have we coordinated with Bike Walk Central Florida?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, we have. We're getting more comments from them up to pretty much every day. So, yes.
And so, one of the big concerns, that I have and constantly hear from the public is getting the bicycles out of the roadway, getting them onto dedicated trails along the roadways. I think most of us can agree that the FDOT propositions that we were going to mix bicycles with regular traffic just hasn't quite panned out for so many reasons. The roadway themselves, the awareness of the drivers and the bicyclists, some not willing to even go into the roadway has been a challenge. But, Mr. Durr, on the east side, which a good portion is my district and Commissioner Delari's district, we have a lot of equestrian interest. And I know that as a private citizen, I always push to try to connect to all the state parks. You got the Charles Bronson out there, you got the Little Big Econ, you got the Seminole Ranch, which is actually in Brevard and Orange, you've got the Deseret and Osceola, all of which have trails in the respective counties, but there's no connectivity. In some areas, it's a matter of 500 yards to connect. So I think we should be looking at the connectability to not only the other parks, state parks throughout our county, but the other parks state parks in the other regions on the east side. The east side is still relatively accessible and open with not a lot of development that has taken place. And of course, our rural area, that's not happening. So the opportunity probably lends itself. And I know in my district, the Flagler Trail, as it works its way up through Geneva, is, matter of fact, we've got people that are actually parking vehicles for sale on the Flagler Trail in downtown Geneva. We probably ought to have somebody look into that, but that area of the trail, again, is not well marked, needs some improvement. When I came on the board, it needed mowed. You couldn't even tell where the trail was at. So I appreciate y'all taking care of that. But those would be my comments, and we make sure we look at, accommodating now, especially on that east side, where we have wide open spaces that we may be able to reasonably attain connectivity or work with our regional partners on getting that connectivity to not only to the county but the state parks as well. Because often what happens now, if you're an equestrian user, you may be able to go into the Little Big Econ, but you can't get down to the Tosahatchee, and that'd be a wonderful ride, all on the east side with those two counties. So I think if we work with our regional partners, that's something we could accommodate, and I'll be happy to assist with there. Other comments from the commission? Questions?
Sure.
Commissioner Delary?
Thank you. Rick, great work, and your staff and everyone, all the consultants did a phenomenal job, as well as the community input. The demographics, and I'm not talking about getting into the numbers of people that have been looking at this. Is it just from one area of the county? Is it around the entire county, different age groups? I saw a little bit of some of the demographics you have there, but I just want to make sure that everyone is being represented.
Yeah, we're seeing a good representative cross-section right now. We just showed you kind of a higher level view.
Okay.
We'll be able to provide you actually down to the numbers on there.
That's fine.
And right now, we're also just showing you Seminole County residents, because we can cross-match these with things like zip codes.
Okay.
Ironically, and including on the Rolling Hills plan, we're getting a lot of website hits from folks that don't live in Seminole County. Rolling Hills plan, I just found out, had a hit from London, England, so.
Perfect.
Maybe even Cleveland. But clearly, we're trying to hone in on just the views of our residents here.
So when you're doing the maps, please go to whatever standards are out there, because when I see the blue, I look at blueways, and those aren't blueways. Also, there are people out there that could be slightly colorblind,
Sure.
like myself, so it's difficult to differentiate between colors. I've had problems looking at maps because of that.
Understood.
So looking at different forms of lines are a lot easier for us. But I want to make sure that if we have people that have any type of disabilities, that we're trying to address that. As Commissioner was talking about connecting to Orange County and to other areas, if we can do that in a bigger way, we can actually get additional funding from either MetroPlan or FDOT regarding that. In the amount of walking or trails that I actually do, I've been having issues with some of the ADA warning strips at some of the crossings because it's a rubber mat. And I've seen in some areas around the country they actually use a concrete form, and it's a lot easier and they're more durable. You may want to look at that. As well as, I know because of what we've been doing, we've been putting in some permanent counters. We may want to put more permanent counters in so we actually see what the trail volumes are. I'm glad we're getting the input from the cities, as well as the school system, but you did not put Seminole State College in there because they have a couple of big campuses that we should be trying to connect with.
Oh, thanks, Bob.
There are residents too.
They are.
But
Even if they are from Cleveland.
even-
You already know this is not going away anytime soon.
We're having a good time with this, that's great.
In some of the trail road crossings, there are some applications you can actually put the DOT's approved from in-road LED lighting to actually light up those crossings, and they're all solar powered. You don't actually see the solar cells because they're actually embedded into the asphalt or the lights themselves, and they're new products that they're very durable, so we should be looking at some of those as well. But I like the way you're going. I like the approach, and one of the questions I've always had is people have contacted us many times where they're having a hard time finding stuff online, so just make sure that there are a limited amount of clicks to get to the maps. But otherwise, great job. Keep it up.
Anyone else? Commissioner Constantine?
You know, I am so proud of the Trails and the Parks program that you've got. And I hear all the time as I'm out there, how many citizens are just so appreciative of this and how it blends in with, you know, the quality of life that's so important to our citizens. One of the things is safety. We put those every half mile, you know, just those destination. Are we also looking at expanding that and going into these other locations and doing that also?
So we're down to now every quarter mile on our main trails.
Wonderful.
And then in our wilderness areas, that has been a multi-year effort working with our partners, even on the, even in the state lands, to have smaller markers GPS located. And this has helped really cut down on the response time of folks that are either lost or have an emergency out on a natural land property, whether it's ours, the county owns it or not. To have that database and to have our first responders to have that information has been invaluable that we've heard.
So
we've done a
important.
fantastic job working with our partners on that.
Mr. Chairman,
Thank you.
Can I piggyback on that? So I was at the Bike 5 City Walk about a week or so ago. The days kind of gelled together. And they had an interesting thing there on the Bike 5 Cities where they had a mobile bike shop. And Bike Walk Central Florida actually put that together. It'd be nice, and I actually spoke to the guy, and he says that they're open 7 days a week, and they're comparable cost to a local bike shop. So it may behoove us to actually try to figure out, is there a way to put that out there where, just like you call them AAA, you call a mobile bike shop.
Like Ceto.
Excuse me?
I said like Ceto,
Yeah.
but for bikes.
Okay, any other?
If it's something out there we can do, why
We can
not?
look at that, yes.
Commissioner Carey, did you have, I see your hand. Go ahead, Commissioner Carey.
I was going to say that, you know, we talk a lot about when people come to Central Florida, even if they're going to the attractions or other places, that they are always looking for something else to do. And I think our trails, I mean, they're award-winning trails. People from all around come and comment about our trails. I think many times people going to conferences and things in Orlando or Orange County choose to stay at our hotels up in the north section of the county because they're accessible to the trails. And so I've heard a lot of positive feedback about that. So it doesn't surprise me that we're hearing from people outside of the area. Also, our sports teams, when they come, and, you know, they play a game and then they have a lot of downtime. And I've heard a lot of feedback from parents that say they're really glad that we have trails and natural land so they can go do something else that doesn't cost them more money. And so I think it's all positive, and I think that we'll continue to hear from people outside the area who probably have been users of the trail system or our natural land system over the years.
Okay.
Good job.
Mr. Lockhart?
Well, yeah, great job. As always, your team does remarkable work, and the outreach to the community has been great. Of course, we always want more feedback, right? It's always wonderful to have more feedback. The things that I hear that, in addition to all of the positives, are concerns about maintenance, and the how quickly we can get to some of the repairs. That's just something that I think is always, anytime you have this type of infrastructure in place and things are going to happen, and the more we make, the more we have to maintain. And so I just, I hope that you will not hold back with us in sharing what you really think you need in order to do the quality job to maintain what we have, because it's critical. One call from John Morgan can wipe out a really good experience. So please keep us really, please don't tell me what you think I want to hear. Please tell me what you really think you need in order to maintain what we need to maintain. Okay, thanks.
And I'll mirror that comment. We need to know straight up what funding is necessary. Don't have a perceived issue with bringing what needs to be brought to us. I mean, at the end of the day, for citizens, public safety, parks and recreation, what else is there? The government really should be doing on behalf of the citizens. Those are two of the probably most important things that this body can make decisions on. Our sheriff does a great job on the public safety. Our public works people do a great job. Our parks and rec people do a great job. And those really are the focus points of the benefits to our community. And we've got one of the best parks and trail systems, I will argue, in the Central Florida region, if not in the entire state. And leveraging that with y'all's accreditation speaks volumes of what previous commissions have done and been willing to do, and I hope future commissions will continue to do that. So with that, Clint, do we have anybody on the line that wishes to weigh in on item number 11?
No, sir.
Okay, very good. Anybody in the audience that needs to speak on item 11? Seeing none, Mr. Durr, you're next with number 12, and you've got exactly 23 minutes to pull this off. And Clint, if you would,
No pressure.
if you would queue up those that may want to speak on item 12 for Rolling Hills. And while they're setting that up, if I could ask the commission, is hoping to get out of here at noon. Is everybody okay to get back here at 1
Yeah,
instead of 1:30
yes.
to try to expedite, move on? I know some have other commitments this evening and this afternoon, so, okay, we'll try to get back at 1. If I know some other presentations have to be given, we'll try to get back here by 1.
Yeah,
Mr. Chairman, the problem is that we noticed it for 1:30.
Well, we'll get started early, and we'll let those that come in at 1:30 come in.
We don't have, the items this afternoon aren't public hearing
They're work
items. They're
sessions.
not, they're work session items, right?
It takes us a few minutes to get going, get out of our own way half the time anyway.
Ready?
Yes, do it. Please.
All right, for the record again, Richard Durr, Leisure Services Director. Wanted to give you a very brief overview of where we are on Rolling Hills, and this is probably a great time to introduce the team again. Bill Pandos, who you met previously. Keith Welty is our project manager on the Seminole County side, and then with us today is Pete Seckler. He's the director of GAI Community Solutions Group, and Keith Oropeza is also in the crowd with us that worked on the design for the master plan. I'm going to give you a very brief overview, and I promise it'll be brief. An update on the project. The scope of services that we had for GAI was to basically put together the Phase 1 Trail and Park Master Plan. When I say Phase 1 Trail and Park Master Plan, last fiscal year, so the one we just left, we had $2 million set aside out of the Transportation Penny Tax Fund for design and construction of a trail system at Rolling Hills Park. This fiscal year we just moved into is another $2 million. So we've roughly have about a $4 million pot of money that we've allocated, that you've allocated, towards the development of the trails at this location. So we've asked them to come up with the detailed master plan of that fit within our budget. And at the same time, we said there's a lot of other things that have been tossed around as future potential projects at this location, such as a dog facility or a dog park of some way. One of the things that we asked them to do is to make sure that as we're setting the table, and we're putting the sort of the bones and the structure together of the park, and that's exactly what the trail system will be at this location, is that we're still looking forward into the future, that we haven't boxed ourselves in, that we've still left the ability for us to develop future elements at the park as funding becomes available, and one of those things they looked at was a potential dog facility. We're not asking you to take any action on that future plan whatsoever. That is completely a forward-looking plan that allows us to refine that over time as funding becomes available. So I wanted to be very clear on that. The thing that we are asking you for, however, today is on the Phase 1 Trail and Park Master Plan, and Pete's going to walk you through that in just a moment to show you all the ins and outs of that one. And then we wanted to show you how we then also adapted, and this came before you several months back, where we had to change the scope to then turn to another online platform that's slightly different, but had some of the similar types of features to it. So for folks that aren't familiar with the process, a very brief overview. The Rolling Hill Golf Club closed in 2014. the public got involved and asked the county to look at the possibility of acquiring the facility. We had another grant that was working through the Florida Communities Trust, or FCT. We looked at transferring that grant to this location. It took us several years to do that, working hand in hand with the neighborhood as well as the state. We found some environmental issues out on the property that needed to be remediated, and the neighborhood came forward and agreed to basically pick up that tab and tax themselves for $1.5 million to clean up the property and fix the environmental issues that were there. So once we're able to do that and secure the necessary commitments from the state, the property was acquired on August 31st, 2018, at which point the real work started. And over that amount of time, the county has been a caretaker of that facility. So we've gone through a lot of cleanup out on the property, analysis on all of the existing features that were left and decaying from the golf course. We had demolished a number of items throughout there. While we were doing so, we were also doing our due diligence on the property for the redevelopment of this property as a passive park. So everything from looking at adjacencies to the facility to making sure we had locations of utilities marked and understood the topographical issues out on the property and some of the environmental issues that we've had that we've dealt with out there as well. One of the things that we wanted to make sure that we did too was develop a vision for the development of the park. And we put up our arms around the idea of sort of the classic American park design by Frederick Law Olmsted. And that the idea is it wouldn't look like we'd come in and create a park out of just whole cloth, that we would work with the property to make it look like that this property has evolved this way through actions of natural forces. And we had a big meeting with you back in January of 2019 talking about all of those details of the vision. Now, we got to see through this current pandemic how important spaces like this have become, where we've seen a massive explosion in the number of folks that are frequenting our parks, and especially this type of passive facility, where folks really, you talk about recreating, it's really recreating. They're able to refresh themselves of being out in nature, and we've seen nationally how important that has been to the general public, and as well as here in Seminole County. That we've got such a variety of different natural areas and ecosystems that we could restore here on this property. We've got 80 feet of fall basically across the entire property, going from wetlands all the way up into some high-end dry land, and making sure that as we restored those areas, we would pay attention of doing so within those natural systems. Likewise, whatever we built there, we wanted to make sure that we were doing so with the sensitivity of just as much of the ecological environment as we were as the built environment. That we're really trying to set the table for folks to have memorable times and memorable places here at the facility. So we want to be just as delicate with how we treat that going forward. So this is a shot right now of just some of the activity that's going on the local streets. So this is the kind of activity that we're embracing in the neighborhood and being made available to the rest of Seminole County. Now, when we worked with GAI, they looked at some guiding principles, if you will, of how we would approach design, of how we would enhance different view sheds and maybe screen unfavorable views. But really, the overall idea was following through on our promise of the vision of this place and making sure that even the design of the trail was respectful of that vision. So again, we met with you in January of 2019 with the idea that we would create this community park that would be very distinct to Seminole County and to all of Florida going forward. So with that in mind, GAI was able to work with our staff to then refine that plan and really program it down to the topographic survey that was done over the entire property. And then they were able to cast forward and look forward into the future to say, if this is how we design the trail system today, where would all of those other things, if we were to develop them over time, where would they land? And in this case, we showed things such as there's been discussion of maybe a community building where the clubhouse used to be, or a playground, or a dog park, or disc golf, or where would those things happen? And making sure that those ideas would still work sometime in the future as funding and as desire to develop these ideas became available. So with that, we put together all of this into another platform. This is a slightly different one. It's more GIS based, and this was very helpful to us as we asked folks to comment on the system. But this was launched as well on September 2nd, so we had a grand opening of 2 different online platforms. This is one, again, that we wanted to zoom into the actual Seminole County zip code. So we had 1,384 individuals looking at just this property alone and this project alone. There were many more web hits from all over the place, but these are the ones that we were really zooming in on as we go. And as we wrap up the project, you'll be able to see all that data as well. This process also had the ability for you to understand a little bit more about the project, to take a look at the vision, the overall vision for the process, as well as the Phase 1 plan, and then your ability to participate and leave meaningful input. So in this case, we had 5 shorter, well, slightly longer videos on the website that you could watch at your leisure. It was completely on demand. Overall, taking you through the history of the project to the master plan vision and the development of the trail system on this property. Likewise, we had an interactive map so that you can zoom into and then leave your pinpoint comments on the map. Positive, negative, whatever you had on your mind, you can leave that there for us to be able to take a look at as we went forward. We went through the same process of getting the word out. So this had weekly checks going on as well to see what kind of response we were getting from the public. And we made sure that these were going out, and these bulletins were going out, just as well as the overall trail system. And by linking the two, we are able to tie those two things together that understand you are talking about a trail system at Rolling Hills as well. So that sets the table for the tour around the site, and I'm going to vacate this spot so that Pete can sit here.
Thanks, Rick. Good afternoon. My name is Pete Seckler. I'm the Director of the Community Solutions Group at GAI.
Welcome.
And I am from Ohio, and I've been to Cleveland.
Oh, yeah, glad to have you here.
Welcome.
30 years ago this month, I started my career in Central Florida. And one of the great things about not being from Florida is that you really want to understand Florida. And so to me, just learning about the ecology of Florida, the community of Florida, the things that are that make Florida special to me have been such a rewarding thing to really study and not take anything for granted, but actually try to really study and understand. I'm going to go very quickly. I'm hoping that many of you saw the videos, so you've probably heard me drone on way too long. You know all my thoughts. I'm hoping that folks that are on the line saw those thoughts. Essentially, as Rick said, our goal was to build upon the 2019 plan, and while we do that, accomplish a couple of things. We need to create a framework around which future investments can be made consistent with the vision, but also deliver a really great Phase 1 plan with 4 miles of connected trail, so that on day 1, when you do that Phase 1, you've really got a great community asset. We also need to hook in the various program elements that are associated with the Florida Communities Trust Partnership, and we've done that. And we also wanted to work in concert with the planned traffic calming and pedestrian crossing improvements and so forth around the perimeter of the property, Palm Springs Drive, North, Raymond, et cetera. To walk through the property just very, very quickly, we've got the center at Lake Jeanette where the old golf clubhouse was. That breaks off to the left to the Arboretum Walk, to the right, moving up into the more sort of rolling area of the property. And really sort of thinking about how can we take advantage, how can we take the things that make the site special and turn them up? How do you make something that's rolling more dramatic? How do you make something that's low and wetland oriented really more natural, as Rick said, to sort of develop this as if it truly was created by nature? So the opportunity to really reclaim the littoral edge of that lake wetland environment and allow people the chance to go down and really explore it, I think is what the design is about. Where do those opportunities exist? So walking around the park, we start to articulate the different types of spaces. We start to subdivide some of the fairways. A golf course is a beautiful place, but if you think about it, it's all really pretty much the same thing. It's several hundred feet of open fairway in the middle and a few trees on the side and some well-placed obstacles. So this is about beginning to compose views that create outdoor rooms where people and families can have different types of experiences over the next 100, 200 years on this property. This will be a park in perpetuity. I know it was mentioned earlier about the dog park. I actually agree. I think Daytona Avenue is possibly not the best location for that, and there are other alternate sites. And as Rick said, we're not really voting on the long-range plan right now. We're voting on the Phase 1 plan, which is the trail. There are some places on the trail where we have to solve some particular issues, and this is one looking down towards Lake Jeanette where we've got a significant amount of grade change. So this is a place in phase one where we think we can come in with one of our more sort of developed park features, if you will, which is this terrace walk area. So on the right, the trail will go downhill, but if you want to take an ADA acceptable route and also have an environmental and a learning experience per the FCT grant, this is an opportunity to sort of break off the trail and have an experience like this that can be very, very special. And we really think when you look at the long-term vision that we drew, whether you agree with every little aspect of the vision or not, I think the point is that we see dozens of these types of opportunities over the next 20 years, or however long it is as you develop this park. You've got some powerful landscapes at the areas called the Geyer and the Grasslands, where we really get into some dramatic landforms. And this is kind of the slide I'd like to sort of conclude this part of the presentation on, which really says that we believe that by locating the trail, using the landform that we have, amplifying the tree canopy where we can in phase one, we really can create a wonderful passive park that is great for exercise, it's great for people of all abilities, and it can be a location for all different types of play. So the phase one park is really tied to this phase two vision, and what I want to conclude with is I want to kind of cut to the chase on what some of the comments were that we heard. First of all, I do want to say something about positive comments. There's an enormous amount of positive comments that we received, just about the whole endeavor and the whole sort of philosophical approach to this process that began with your 2019 plan. And so before we get into the things that we want to maybe adjust, I think it's important to recognize that we really fielded a lot of positive remarks about this, and we think the community is very excited about what this property can bring. But to get to the point, there's a few things that people are concerned about. There's concerns about traffic and speeding on Andrews Drive. There's concern about sort of locations of cut-through traffic, for instance, on Palm Springs Drive. Placement of where should you put a parking lot? Where should the central parking lot, so to speak, be? Maybe distributing parking, trailheads, and then some things about some future stuff like dog parks and stuff that really aren't on the table for today. So what I wanted to do is sort of take those things down kind of one by one and really kind of focus on some core areas where most of the orange dots showed up. I think these are actually pretty simple questions to respond to. The most complex really is this issue in the center. And our thought process in the center was that the current parking lot for the old golf course really is no longer viable. The asphalt's not viable, the subbase isn't viable, it needs to be replaced. And our thought was to just create a new parking lot immediately to the west that could branch off and serve new activities and keep the old golf course clubhouse site completely clear to keep all options open for a new community building. That's why we did that. We just said, well, let's not touch that site. Let's go over here. And then when the county's ready to really do that project, they've got a completely open palette. But we recognize the concerns, and we think that if you look to the right, there's a very reasonable way to go in here. This was the old golf clubhouse, was right about where I have the cursor, if you can see that. And we think we can go in and essentially just rebuild the old parking lot in its existing location. And we can do it in a way that makes sort of a zigzag, where it's not really a cut-through route. Right now, you can just kind of fly through there on an S-curve, if you will. And we can we can make that behavior something that is much more deliberate. You're clearly going to be going through a parking lot, and in fact, we can actually design this as sort of a shared space for cars and pedestrians, so that when you come in here as a motorist, you truly are in the park. You're not just cutting through a parking lot. So that, to me, is the first quick answer. Another question that came up. Now I'm over on Raymond. I'm down by Raymond and North. There were some people that were uncomfortable with the idea of locating a small trailhead, particularly with a few car parks, between the homes that are on Raymond. You have a house at the corner of Raymond and North. You have another residence just up the way. There's an open space. We think that open space should be a way to get into the park, but we accept the critique that maybe that's not the place to allow cars to come in and park. We did look at other opportunities for trailheads on North, but there's a triangle of land here where it says acreage. This is about a half acre, a long sliver of land that the county does not own. So we really couldn't work off North very easily in that location. So what we have done instead is we're proposing, you have the area farther down on North where you have the existing cap. And we think we can come in here and basically just clean up that concrete cap, put a very, very small parking opportunity there, 6 to 8 cars, and allow bicycles as well as cars come in, take a secondary path, come up the hill through the trees, and come down to Lake Jeanette. Just as a very, very minor modification to the plan, so that there is a southern entrance to the park. Finally, comments about cut-through, and I think our short response to that is the county's already on top of that. You've got a fantastic program. It's happening on another channel through Transportation and Public Works. And what we believe is important about the traffic calming work that you're doing is it's going to make driving through the park at this location as a motorist, you will be entering the park, and the park will perceptually be going across the road. So it's not like you have park, road. It's going to feel like the road is entering the park environment on the park's terms. And I think that's incredibly important from a traffic calming point of view and a bike ped point of view. So we have a revised master plan, which you can see here. Again, it's really the primary trail and the primary kind of structural formation of the creation of outdoor rooms that can be continually vegetated over time. And we have a budget for this. And I'd like to explain the budget a little bit. This is a little bit confusing. Let me actually start down here at the $4.31 million number. If we take all of the improvements that we have identified as capital construction items, we think that's about $3.87 million, and that includes a 15% contingency. And then if we add design and permitting costs to that, you get $4.31 million. Now, how did you get to that? We think there's two major components to the park if you think about building the park. One is the primary trail system, the 12-foot trail, the grading, and the other things that kind of come with building the 4-mile, 12-foot trail. That's about $2.25 million. Then there's all the other stuff. There's the secondary trails, there's the Florida Communities Trust elements, there's educational signage, there's ADA access, and so forth and so on. We think that's about $1.62 million. So if you add the 2.25 and the 1.6, you get the 3.87 of capital construction. The notation that we have here on the Florida Communities Trust Program, there's about $1 million worth of program items that are associated with the FCT grant, but really that $1 million is covered or included in the primary trail, the 2.25, or the other park amenities, the 1.6. So these three numbers here are not necessarily meant to be additive. This is a little confusing, and I apologize for that. The point is that we think altogether this is about a $4.3 million project, including all the soft costs, and have just been excited and thrilled to work with the team on it. Thank you.
And I'll own that. This is what happens when a director plays with a slide at the last minute, thinking they got the whole thing down and making a boo-boo. So this is
No. Let the consultant take the.
Yeah, he's from Cleveland.
Yeah, I know. What do I even know? I'm from. Yeah, really. No kidding. No kidding. So anyway, it's been our privilege to work with the team on this, and
Good
we're
job.
very excited about it.
Well done.
Thank you. Questions,
Good
comments?
stuff.
Anything that we can do?
Do we have, Clint, anybody on the line that's desires to talk about number 12, the Rolling Hills Master Plan?
No, sir.
Okay, we'll go to the board. Commissioner Lockhart?
Well, I just want to say thank you for being so responsive and listening to the citizen feedback. that is, I don't think you realize how wonderful that is for us. When the people that we've hired listen, it's incredibly wonderful. I know that
Amen.
might sound like a strange compliment, but
No,
it doesn't always
it's-
happen, I
no,
assure you.
I believe in that very deeply.
Yeah.
This
I-
is not our park, this is Seminole County's park, and we need to respect. You know, we always feel like as professionals that we have the opportunity to share our ideas, but at the end of the day, it's the community's park, and we need to be sensitive to that.
It's a wonderful vision. It's
Absolutely.
beautiful. You've
Spot
done
on.
a great job.
Good job.
Commissioner Constantine?
Thank you. I think you get a sense of how important it is to the citizens that live there. We understand that this is a county-wide park, and I know that there are citizens throughout that area that are in both Commissioner Lockhart and my district that are just chomping at the bit to use that park. But the people that live there really have invested time, sweat, and money for this. And so to see this starting to come into fruition is such a, just exciting. It really is. Those pictures, I hope we can translate them to the real vision because they were beautiful.
Thank you.
And I know that the folks there will be extremely excited. As is always in events like this, there is continually rumors flying. And this, since 2014, there has been rumors flying all over. I was just talking to the county manager yesterday. I got 2 individuals that sent back concerns to me saying, we've heard that there's going to be development on, I said, guys, we just bought it. How can you say that? But as we go through this process, Rick and everybody, continue to tell them that with our agreement with
FCT.
yeah, we can't do any, and we don't want to do anything, but we couldn't even if we wanted to. And that what they're seeing on these pictures is actually the vision that we want to turn into into fruition. Now, we all know some people want a golf course or some people want, this or that, and we will talk about some of those amenities as we go along. But the park itself, and as you talk about the trail that you're developing, that is the backbone of this. That's going to make it, work. And it's very exciting. We all know that we have to take care of those, and I think that we've done a great job between the roads and the trail and the parks, working to make sure that we take care of the people's concerns on Raymond, on North, on Palm Springs. So it seems to all be coming together. The only thing we still have to worry about is, who really wants or doesn't want the dog park. But more importantly, that these folks know that this is going to happen. It's not going to happen tomorrow, but this is going to happen. And you guys done a great job.
Good. Commissioner Delory, you had your hand
Thank you.
raised.
I'm not going to repeat what Commissioner Lockhart and Mr. Constantine said. I agree with all their comments. The only thing that I'd like to add to it is that you alluded to the fact that there is a public works project, which we all know there is. I'd like to see somewhere in that web page site a link to it so people understand that the 2 of them are coexisting and
sure,
the 2 of them
yeah.
are working together, and so they're not separated, hand in glove, so to speak. And it'd be nice if there was a description or a little bit outline of why it's important that they're both happening simultaneously but separate, but here's the link to see it.
Yeah, sure, absolutely.
Otherwise, spot on so many different levels. Thank you.
Good,
Well
thank
done.
Great. Well, I'm not going to repeat what everybody just said. I would just mirror everything that's already been said. What a great job everybody's done. I would very much be remiss if I didn't just state and remind, we're very interested in native foliage in landscaping. I saw some of the renderings weren't quite Florida palms.
Save water.
There were a couple of We tried to get all the anomalies out of there.
And I got just to ask, just,
All that grass,
yeah,
fertilizer.
right. Really? We had a pit bull being walked by a resident on the trails?
Did I not catch that?
Change it to
I pay attention to those little
a collie
minute
or
details.
something.
Maybe a lab or something.
A lab would be in the water already.
Yeah, right.
Right,
Okay.
Amy?
That was a real picture, though, I think, of the real. of
Those
the
are real
neighborhood.
people.
Yeah, those are people who live there, so.
Oh, my
so that's-
goodness. Okay.
I can offer up a golden doodler too.
Right. Anything else from the commission? Anything from anybody in the audience?
I have a question for the commission.
Sure.
Because I think what Rick wants is a very definitive go forth and conquer on Phase 1 as it's proposed. We have the money budgeted. We'd like to really start to pull the trigger on it. So that's our ask of you today is to, for Phase 1, we know that there are other elements, but what they showed you for Phase 1 today, Rick's ready to get moving on.
Mr. Chairman,
Chair,
I
we
believe-
entertain
I
a
believe
motion.
this- Do you want a motion?
Which
Mr.
is the trail, right?
Mr. Motion,
Right.
make a motion to approve Phase 1 as presented to us here
Second.
today.
Motion is second. Any further discussion? Commissioner Lockhart?
Aye.
Commissioner Delory,
Aye.
Carrie?
Aye.
Constantine?
Yes.
Zembauer? Yes? Any other input? Questions? None? Okay. Let's recess until 1:15. That gives everybody enough ample time. We'll get back in here. Thank you. Thank you all very much.
Thank you very much.